Right, right. Good morning, everybody. It's about 9:30. Let's resume. I've got a couple of housekeeping matters, and we'll see if anybody else has got anything. I have received the updated court documents list from whomsoever, and whoever that was. Thank you very much. I've not, slightly troublingly, received any statements from the interested parties who spoke the other day. I know that my case officer in Bristol is there and would have forwarded them, so I've not seen
There
anything.
have been some, sir. And we have put some of them up on in the inquiry documents. So there are some hard copies. There were some hard copies around, but so they are going up onto they have already gone up, I think.
Right. I saw that the CD list was there, but I haven't looked at it.
So there are a few there for people who didn't hand them in on the day, but have put them in subsequently.
At some point, if I could have hard copies, that would be great.
Yeah,
that reassures me slightly. I was slightly worried about the silence. That's great. Can I just pick up on one thing with the Rule 6 party? It's simply I couldn't find a particular document, and you could probably help me. When we come on to ecology next week, we've got well, you were going to have a split of witnesses. You've obviously only got one witness now. You sent in an email to certainly the inspector and doubtless the other parties, dividing the two documents into who was dealing with which part of the documents. Does that ring bells? Yeah. Right. I can't find that email.
It's in court docs. It's, I think if you go to NID 8, 8.4, yes. So if you go to NID 8.4,
that's fine. I didn't look on the core docs. I was just trying to find it in a myriad of emails. That sorts that. Okay, that's very useful. The other thing, and this is a personal request, has anybody got a paracetamol or something that I could have?
Yes, I have, sir. Thank you.
I suppose, strictly speaking, I'll have paracetamol from all three sides. But at that point, I think I just keel over. Yeah. I'm absolutely fine to do the inquiry. I've just got this nagging headache that won't go away.
So is Nurofen okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very good of you. Thank you. Yeah, I think if I end up taking 6 of them, you probably need a new inspector. All right, thanks. Thanks very much for that.
I'm just noting a
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we called that one. Okay, thanks for that. Right. Any housekeeping or related matters from anybody? Yes.
I have one. On my opening speech, we removed a part because we didn't have any information from Thames Water.
Yes, I remember that.
They've now, rather late, submitted what we asked for. So can I submit that into the system? It's just figures on the reliability of the water supply.
I remember that you removed it.
We didn't have the evidence.
Marici, any thoughts?
Discussions. We've got an updated position from Thames Water on the scheme in the documents, so I don't know what this is.
This is the outages saying how many times the water's failed in the last 2 or 3 years.
But it's not specific to our scheme.
No.
Well, I tell you the best way of doing it. If you could perhaps pass that over just to the appellants for the moment, so the appellants can have a look at it, see what it is. Yeah. I mean, my inclination is absolutely let's get it in. But first of all, let's just give the appellants the opportunity to look at it. And I will make a note.
Thank you.
So the Thames Water, that we're probably going to have that document in. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Mr. Brown. Anything further by way of housekeeping from anybody? No. Okay. So today we are dealing, first of all, still on the landscape topic with Mr. Harrison from the Rule 6 party and cross-examination of Mr. Harrison. Then we're moving on to Mr. Smith, still on landscape for the appellant. And hopefully we can at least begin the cross-examination of Mr. Smith, and we'll see how that goes in terms of timings tomorrow. Yeah, I think when we come to the end of today, I'd like to see if we can fix the timings tomorrow as best we possibly can. I know these things vary, but but we'll see if we can fix those timings. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I need to get back home because it's my wife's birthday meal tomorrow night. And if I don't get there, that's bear thinking about. But when we get to the end of today, we'll review how we're going on that. Okay, so Mr. Brown, over to you to call your first witness.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to?
Yep. Well, the far one. Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Okay, good morning. Mr. Harrison, your proof of evidence is document NID 5.8. So can you please introduce yourself to the inquiry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Brown. Sir, my name is Chris Harrison. I'm the chairman of the Haslemere Society, which is one of the 4 parties to the Rule 6 group. Just for clarity, I'm not a member of Haslemere Vision or of the Haslemere South Residents Association, and I'm not a councillor of the Town Council, the other parties. A few words about the Haslemere Society. We have over 400 members who live across the town and the surrounding countryside. We believe that we are the oldest civic society in the country, having been founded in 1884, at that time known as the Haslemere and District Amenity Society. Amenity is obviously a word relevant to this inquiry, but it was long ago dropped from our name. Although love and care of the amenity of the town, defined by the beauty of the natural landscape and surrounds of the town, remains at the heart of the purpose of the society. Turning to myself, I've been a resident of Haslemere since 1984. I was born in North London, actually, but lucky enough to win a bursary to a West Sussex school at the age of 11, at which point I first became acquainted with the beauty of the Sussex Weald, the North and South Downs. After university and starting my career, I lived in London and first travelled through Haslemere in the daylight on a motorcycle, actually, with my then fiancée, now wife, on a warm summer day in 1976 on an outing to the South Downs. And actually, I remember to this day the impression of driving into Haslemere from the north of the town, up through Shepherd's Hill and out onto the Midhurst Road. And the beauty, it was a particularly fine day, but I was drawn by memories of that, such that in 1984, when the opportunity came to move to Haslemere, my wife and I both rapidly took up the opportunity, also, of course, affording the opportunity to commute easily to London. I also should stress I live in the north side of Haslemere, so in terms of my private residence, I'm not in any way affected by the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I please first ask to confirm that you're not appearing as an expert?
I am not appearing as an expert.
Okay, and before you start, can I just ask whether to say you would like to make comment on any of your proof of evidence?
Yes, thank you. I've sat through yesterday and the morning of Monday, and through that, it's caused me to want to make a couple of small edits. In paragraph 1 of the executive summary of my report, I say that Haslemere is surrounded by national landscape. It should actually say national landscape and national park. As the inspector will have noted, to the south of the town, we're bordered by the South Downs National Park, although of course that offers similar protection to national landscape. Similarly, on page 3.1, I think, on page 3, I qualify my evidence in the same way at paragraph 2. So I'd like to just amend that.
Hang on, let me just catch up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Thank you. On numbered paragraph 2 of the executive summary headed conclusion, and on the conclusion on page 13, I say that the application does not comply with P1 and P6 policies of the Surrey Hills Management Plan and with policy 9 of the neighbourhood plan. That's not in the literal sense of non-compliance, because those policies inform planning decisions as I now understand it, in terms of both balancing the weight of the amenity, landscape and scenic beauty, which is policy P.1, resisting of spoiling the setting of the national landscape policy P9, and also evaluating the impact and mitigation of trees and hedgerows, which is policy H9. So a slight sort of nuance shift there. What I meant there was that the application would create highly significant adverse impacts and would spoil the amenity, landscape and scenic beauty referred to in those policies. With respect to policy H9 of the neighbourhood plan, which is CD 6.3, I do take the view that the application does not satisfy H9.93 Roman 3 in terms of the loss of the existing canopy of mature trees on the Midhurst Road, and does not conserve trees as contemplated by policy H1. Finally, on page 5, the penultimate paragraph of section 8, I should acknowledge that the evidence that was provided yesterday to the effect that the new houses will not be visible from Belvale Lane, I thought that they would, and so that should be deleted from my evidence. Thank you.
Subject to those clarifications, do you confirm that the evidence you will provide are true opinions, or, where relevant, truly representative of your understanding of the views of those you have had dealings with in the community?
Yes, I do.
Okay, would you like to give your evidence, please?
I would, thank you. So my evidence appears as document NID 5.8, and as so you confirmed on Tuesday, you've previously read this evidence. I don't propose, therefore, to read the evidence verbatim, but I would like to highlight the key messages in it, and I'll follow the flow of the submission and signpost my place in it when I quote directly from it. I hope that's acceptable. Good. Excuse me. My evidence is structured first to address the immediate value of the Red Court side, followed by consideration of Haslemere and its wider surroundings as a settlement of great landscape value. I also include as an appendix extracts from the over 500 letters of objection to the proposal that support the arguments in my paper, which I do so to assist cross-reference. I don't propose referring to those appendices further in my delivery, although there is actually one in particular that I will make reference to at the end of my submission. My report also includes a 2-page executive summary, which complies with the submission requirements as to its length. But I'll start at page 3, noting that I've already introduced myself, which is on page 3. So the Rule 6 group, of which I'm a member, we consider that this proposal to build a major housing development and including a new access road entirely unprotected Surrey Hills natural landscape would cause irreparable loss to the amenity, irreversible damage to the beautiful landscape and scenic countryside, as well as the rich diversity of wildlife that's highly valued by our community and the residents of the surrounding villages. The many hundreds of applications of submissions support this position. I want to present evidence the beauty of the landscape and the countryside has been historically highly valued in Haslemere, and particularly draw attention to Haslemere resident Robert Hunter, whose name has been mentioned on several occasions already in this inquiry, who, together with others, was so impacted by its beauty and understood the need for its protection for future generations that in 1895 they founded the National Trust. And indeed, Robert Hunter was associated with my own society's foundation. Since that period, the mid-19th century, artists and poets have documented the value of the landscape which surrounds Haslemere, and I'll come onto that more. So the main focus of my presentation is on the extremely high value that we place on the landscape, but I also do seek to as best as I understand it, to put it in the context of national policy. So if I could first turn to the immediate landscape value of the Red Court site, about which we heard quite a bit yesterday. The site, it rises on a considerable slope from road level and is visible from the Midhurst Road on entry into Haslemere. And it forms just one of the characteristic and historic sort of verdant tree-lined avenue that approaches the town. It's fair to say that I think every access point to the town is characterised in the same way. The settlement of Haslemere, and this I think is a critical point, unusually is entirely surrounded by national landscape and the national park. That's the Surrey Hills and the South Downs National Park. I could not see that there is another settlement within the Surrey Hills that actually meets the same criteria. There are no, if you like, gaps in the donut that surrounds us. This is critical, I think, and a defining feature of Haslemere and its special status. If allowed, this development would cut a significant slice out of that beauty, out of the landscape, and would irreparably harm the beauty and the view on the approaches to the town from the south. I'd like to actually draw attention here to a point that was drawn during yesterday afternoon's proceedings, or came to my attention, which relates to the accumulated impact of development on national landscape on the site following the development at Sturt Farm, which, as I think everybody knows, is relatively close to this site and is within AONB. It was, I believe, inferred, Mr. Ricci, that this, if this had been allowed, then surely precedent had been set. I think it's worth drawing attention to the fact that the Surrey Hills Management Plan, which is document CD 7.9, states in section 9 at the third paragraph, which I think is electronic page 17, and I quote from it: "Special care needs to be taken over their siting, i.e. of development, volume and design, to ensure that their impact on the landscape does not become progressively greater over the years and takes into account any previous building enlargement." I interpret that in other words, if there is an incursion into the national landscape, this should further discourage any accretive development, such as the one proposed. The landscape does, at this end of the town, is undulating, and the town sits very much in a valley. So it's quite a special sort of topography, if you like. And the consequence of that is, as you approach the town from whichever direction, it affords many glimpses, views, different opportunities to sight aspects of the beautiful landscape. I believe that it would be irreparably harmed by the necessary felling of trees to create the proposed access road. Currently, glimpses of pasture and woodland through the trees on both sides of the road are beautiful, forming a clear transition from rural to urban. And while it's tragic that 2 of those trees have recently been removed, nonetheless, it has afforded a few extra glimpses at this particular time, but that would not be quite the same thing as removing all of those trees. The settlement boundary is marked as the site is reached. Taken together, this corridor of native trees, mature native trees, I should stress, along the road, and the views of green through them are themselves beautiful and worthy of preservation. Building on this site would not just degrade the view to the east, it would undermine the whole sense of the boundary of the town at this point. Much was made yesterday about whether the development would be visible from the road, with Mr. Ricci arguing that only the gatehouse and access to the road was visible. This was supported by superimposed photographs of the site. It's my opinion that from the site, the site would be visible from the road, especially as it approaches Scotland's Lane, even after 10 to 15 years if the proposed tree planting takes place to replace the trees that will be destroyed. I don't think, sir, that this can be decided here, but I would encourage you to consider this point on your site visit and form your own opinion. I think the adverse impact would be made worse by the fact that a building on this site would go a long way to starting to close the gap between Haslemere Town and the next collection of buildings to the south, as well as blocking the transition east to west from the land to the south side of the ridge of Scotland's Lane across the Midhurst Road and over to the area of land at Longding Road. This is a significant band of rural land which would be materially interrupted, and again, irreparable harm to the beauty of the landscape setting would be caused. Speaking to residents who drive through this route regularly, that doesn't include myself. I do use it a fair bit, but it's not a regular daily passage. Many speak of the beauty of the landscape as they approach the town, returning from Midhurst or Chichester. And someone said it makes them catch their breath, even after a decade of living in Haslemere, at any time of the year. Scenes always change in the seasons, but it's unchangeably beautiful. At a personal level, my wife and I, we regularly walk many of the footpaths surrounding Haslemere, and we're blessed with very many, together with couples or with friends, together as a couple or occasionally with friends. The footpaths which border the eastern and western perimeters of the site, which I think are known as FP 597 and BY 104 respectively, do form a natural walking loop with Scotland's Lane to the north and Belvale Lane to the south. And they're enjoyed by many walkers, both residents of the south side of Haslemere and walking visitors to Haslemere, for whom by BY 104 is actually the most tranquil, and I think there's good evidence to say it's the most frequently used route to Blackdown and the Temple of Four Winds, which is one of the principal attraction for walkers to the area. Many runners also use this safe walk. I walked along it recently, and there was two groups of London walkers, one a group of about 12, another just two, walking up there heading that way just one Saturday morning. And as I come on to say, this is something that is being encouraged and we're seeing more and more of in recent years. A regular user of the path along the Midhurst Road commented to me that the views of green hilly fields on one side and the ancient trees lining the paths on the other, the trees offer a natural shield for the noise and sight of the road. So it's a tranquil and beautiful path, and you feel as if you're in the middle of the countryside. That's important because of the four, if you like, the four sides to that circular walk. The Midhurst Road is obviously the one that affords the least tranquility. It's a busy road, as has already been said by other witnesses. And that, they said, was despite not being far from their home. Others have talked about it being the most direct route to access the swimming pool at the activity centre. And again, referring to it as being a tree-lined footpath bordered by natural landscape, striking beauty in all seasons. Interesting, one comment, somebody picked out that Haslemere, the natural environment of Haslemere is considered to be internationally important, being a rare example of forest ecosystem home to wildlife species, a historic living landscape dating back to before medieval times. This is a quote from Wikipedia, I believe. This footpath does allow the walker to see this naturally leafy environment. Others have spoken to me of frequent sightings of deer, badgers, occasionally slow worms, and countless birds. And at dusk, occasionally bats are seen. There are quotes from those in the talk itself, but I'm not going to go into them further. It's worth commenting that the developer is offering new footpaths across the southern side of the site, and that's noted. It's also should be noted there are a number of other local footpaths, bridleways and quiet lanes that I haven't referred to that serve the community waiting to explore this sort of area. That offer is obviously welcome, but I think not necessary, as I will explain. It's interesting also to note that Savills, acting for the developer, state on their web pages about Haslemere. In addition, the surrounding countryside offers ample opportunities for walking, cycling and riding, including Blackdown and the Devil's Punch Bowl, which suggests that the proposed new pathways really add little benefit above the existing extensive network that's already in place. I think, furthermore, any benefit from those paths would be substantially offset by the urbanisation of the footpaths along the eastern and western boundaries. That's the Midhurst Road one, and also the running on the eastern side. And it would be a risk, I believe. I'm not an expert, but I think flora and fauna would inevitably be damaged by that adjustment. The proposals do add an east-west path, but it should be noted that much of the southern link between the existing eastern and western path is along Belvale Lane, most of it, not all. I encourage you again, Inspector Sir, to walk along there. It is a beautiful lane with a watercourse running with ponds and lakes along the side. And frankly, for my money, it's a far more pleasant place to walk than it would be across the field immediately to the north, as is proposed in the developers' proposals. I will also say the proposal to convert footpath 597 at the top of the steep bank above the Midhurst Road, so that's as you turn off Belvale Lane, heading towards the proposed gateway. The proposal to convert it into a bridleway seems to me, frankly, quite absurd and somewhat dangerous. A bridleway would mean that it would both be accessible to horses and to cyclists as well as pedestrians. I know of no horses that go along that road or would want to, and what's more, it would take them from nowhere in particular to nowhere in particular. And the steep nature of the path, even as adapted, would make it a very uncomfortable place for both cyclists and walkers to use. And again, I'm not sure that it would add to any cycle path or cycle way in the town. I'd like to turn to tranquility, which is another key facet of the site's beauty, and much was said about tranquility yesterday. There's no source of light or night pollution other than obviously passing cars in this area, so it does provide a buffer to the town in that sense. As you look up to the hill from the town centre, there's no great loom of light from the land behind Scotland's Close. And also looking from the south towards Haslemere. The Council of Protection of Rural England have a light pollution and dark skies map, which can be accessed from my written submission. And that records, the risk will be a bit technical and I'm not sure I entirely understand, but the level of radiance has been between 0.25 and 0.5 nanowatts per square centimetre. But the important point about that data point is that that is the second darkest night sky categorisation in the entire country. I think it's also worth stating that, interesting enough, the South Downs, which obviously is not in, but it's on the border of, and which is in that same light area, is the newest international designated dark sky reserve. And while this is not in that land, because it borders it, it would adversely impact the night sky there, leaving aside the light created by the additional traffic at night time, of course. So the other point, of course, is back to the sloping site, and that as the ground falls away to the south, then light output from the estate, although it's accepted that you wouldn't be able to see the houses themselves from Belvale Lane at night time, without question, you would see any street lights and other lights from created by the overall residential nature of the estate. It's worth noting that in that area, and indeed in much area surrounding Haslemere, the Milky Way is frequently visible on clear nights, and it's quite likely that that experience would be lost permanently in the Belvale Lane area. I think on the subject of tranquility, well, again, this is not in my report at present. It's worth saying that tranquility is obviously a function of light, noise, and etc. And the traffic, including minibuses for the Scouts and community groups that the Scouts have indicated they would allow to make use of their hut, and for the Forest School, would dramatically alter the tranquility of Belvale Lane, a quite exquisite lane with listed buildings and wonderful sight, and a very narrow lane as well. I think as anyone who knows who lives close to a school, it's one of the biggest challenges for schools is the traffic that they create at key times of the day. I then go on in my report to include some community comments on the use of footpaths and the enjoyment of the footpaths by members of the community. I'm not going to read those out in full, sir, but just by way of reference as to where they came from. Prior to this inquiry, I did reach out both to members of my society and through Mr. Brown to members of the Haslemere South Residents Association, asking for any comments about those footpaths, and it is from those responses that this information is drawn, and the email trails available if needed. I would, however, like to highlight a few words from each of those comments that follow in my report on page 6. There's much reference to safely walking in the area in many of those submissions, and it's also, there's reference to, in the first one, to it being a beautiful and serene place. The second correspondent talks about even loving driving in Haslemere, driving past the green trees, oak fields and beech trees. Oh, sorry, oaks, old oaks and beech trees, and refers to it as being truly devastating should those be lost. The comment is made that we must respect a beautiful landscape, and a very useful comment: we cannot bring the green land back if it is taken away. The commenter refers to the footpath which runs parallel to the road and says it's the most accessible way to get to the leisure centre and towards Blackdown and so forth. So there's a point about people being able to walk in the area that is made, and pointing out that realistically, if you can't walk comfortably there, then the only option is to drive. People talk about accessing for exercise and enjoying beautiful wild spaces. There's also a point in the fourth comment about the path on the Midhurst Road being separated from the road, which makes it much safer. Now, that will still be the case, I think, but again, the sense of separation will be lost for a good long time through the destruction of the trees. More about the stunning and combined views and the enjoyment of the elevated path. So safety, beauty, enjoyment, activity are a key feature. Dawn B comments on sharing moments with her family, enriching the joy in her grandchildren's eyes, and the abundant wildlife is referred to by more than one commentator. I'm sure there'll still be wildlife, but I think it's fair to say that there's a grave risk of disruption. You can read the rest of the comments for yourself, but I'll just finally say, Joe M says how she would be devastated to see the incredible natural habitat destroyed. And I think one doesn't want to dwell too much on well-being, but it's a much talked about topic today. And I'll just quote her final comment. I don't think you can underestimate the importance of retaining the beautiful landscape that should be protected. Such strength and positivity can be drawn from nature, and I certainly feel inspired by the scenery each time as I pass by. So I'm now going to turn to some reflections on Haslemere and its surroundings and the wider value of Haslemere as a landscape, and my belief that this would greatly impair that wider position. First of all, I draw attention to the fact that if you travel to Haslemere by train and arrive at Haslemere station, the first thing that you will see on the platform close to the exit is a greeting from Network Rail saying, "Welcome to Haslemere, gateway to the Surrey Hills area of outstanding natural beauty." Obviously needs to be updated for new terminology. And Haslemere, gateway to the South Downs National Park. Many do travel to Haslemere. In fact, for walking in the countryside, a Network Rail in conjunction with the Community Rail Partnership are working hard to encourage that. And I think on the other day, going back, there was a group of about 30 walkers gathered outside the station, clearly having arrived with a view to walking in the current countryside. And I think all of our residents will attest to the fact we're seeing more and more visitors to our area. I think another context that's important for this ruling that hasn't been stressed greatly is the cultural and historic significance of Haslemere. Prior to the arrival of the railway in 1859, Haslemere was a relatively hard to access, somewhat wild, and had actually quite a rough reputation in many ways, inaccessible. But the arrival of the railway changed all of that, and within a very short period attracted a large number of poets, intellectuals and artists to the town. It became known as Little Switzerland, or at least Hindhead did, up at the top, Little Switzerland. But and I include in my report George Eliot and Alfred Lord Tennyson, both came to live here. Eliot wrote Middlemarch here while renting, but Tennyson, after spending many years visiting and walking in the countryside, built his own house up on Blackdown. I haven't mentioned them in the report, but other artists include Helen Allison and Walter Tyndall. And the celebrated peasant arts movement was founded here. Authors Conan Doyle, George Bernard Shaw and William Tyndall. Sorry, he's not an author. William Tyndall was actually, interesting enough, the first scientist to identify the greenhouse effect, which is relevant to, obviously, keeping the beauty of our world. I think the importance of this is the communities that exist today only exist because of the appeal of this beautiful countryside with its rich nature, landscape and cultural heritage. It's true of myself as to why I came here. And many residents of Haslemere who were not born here have come here because of its proximity to London by rail and the beauty of its countryside that surrounds the town, as well as the many other attributes of the town. And the town, the railway and that attraction continues to be at the heart of the economic vitality of the town. It's interesting that yesterday much was made about the natural and landscape definitions and what's natural, what's landscape. And I'd like to draw your attention to the guidance for assessing landscape for designation as national park, document ID 5.3, which is in the pack. To draw that, just draw that up. So this is guidance for assessing the quality and value of landscapes within national park or areas of outstanding natural beauty. And if I could draw your attention on page 11, that's printed page. I'm not sure what page it is in the virtual version. Paragraph 6.1 talks about natural beauty.
Hang on a second.
Sorry, yeah.
That's right. Getting there.
Yeah, sure. I'll take a sip.
Right, paragraph, sorry.
6.1 on page 11 in the hard copy, as it were.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, so this makes the point that natural beauty is not exhaustively defined in legislation. It's a very subjective characteristic of a landscape and ultimately involves a value judgment. In deciding whether an area has natural beauty, Natural England must therefore make a judgment as to whether people are likely to perceive a landscape as having sufficient natural beauty. And I think that just stresses that obviously much of my submission is a value judgment, but it's important to recognise that the framework accepts that that is in the definition. Paragraph 6.8 I might turn to as well, which is again I think relevant to my submission. So that sets out in table 3 factors related to natural beauty, and I'd like to particularly draw attention there to the last of those two. So talking about natural heritage features, which includes flora, fauna, geology, and geological and physiological features. It does, of course, include tranquility, which I've spoken to, and then cultural heritage, which is what I've been addressing just now. So the influence of cultural heritage on the perception of natural beauty of the area and the degree to which associations, particular traditions, people, artists, writers, or events in history contribute to such perception. So I would submit that Natural England would view what I'm saying about the culture of Haslemere, the cultural heritage of Haslemere, as being very important in this evaluation. And then finally, on page 25 of that document, there is a table and there's a section there on cultural heritage again, which again draws out, I won't read it in detail, but it draws out more about the historic influence on the landscape and associations with written descriptions. So I think that bears very significantly on the people that have both written about and been associated with the landscape. So if I may move on page 10 of my written submission, it's where I've reached. I think it's important actually to draw attention to the precedent that was set in 2007 when the government took the decision to after many years of debate as to how to widen the A3 on the northern borders of Haslemere at what's known as the Devil's Punch Bowl. The original proposals involved either going one way around it or the other way around it, and the road would have gone right through the natural landscape and, if you like, the donut of natural landscape surrounding Haslemere. In the event, a decision was taken to build a tunnel. I believe it's the longest tunnel under land in England. And that came at a cost of £155,000 per metre. I've got another copy, but now that was an enormously high cost. And I did look up the other day, so I just lost it. But I think I'm right. Yes. Even today, the average cost, as I was able to search for a metre, probably should have done it in kilometres, but anyway, it's 12 to 50,000 per metre. Now, it's likely, given the landscape, that we'd be at the higher end of that range. But the fact that they were willing to spend at least 3 times, probably more, given inflation, the normal cost to protect and preserve the landscape on the northern side of the town makes me feel that why would you want to ruin that surrounding landscape now for such a, having spent that amount of money to protect it? And of course, it's worth, in terms of historic context, just to explain or understand how and why is it there is so much protected landscape around Hazelmere? Well, first of all, it's because it's beautiful, but it also, of course, relies on an amazing number of benefit factors who, over the years, have given hundreds of acres for the benefit of the community, including, of course, Sir Robert Hunter, previously referred to. Now, I list 9 of those in my report, and I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but it is a wonderful feature of our town and community that so many people have chosen to do that in the past, and that is how and why we've been able to protect and preserve this very special landscape. And of course, it is relevant that the very existence of the National Trust, which does so much to preserve our landscape on a wider scale, owes itself to its co-founders, of whom 3 had an association with Hazelmere. Sir Robert Hunter lived here. Canon Hardwicke Raumsley, another one, was a frequent visitor to the area and was inspired by the landscape preservation efforts that he observed amongst the local community. And I believe that inspiration should be preserved, sorry. I think it's worth then just referring to a few other documents in the past. We had some reference to earlier documents yesterday. There was a document called the Hazelmere Design Statement of 2010, which was an official Waverley Borough Council initiative which involved local councillors, business and residents. It concluded, beautiful areas around us must be preserved and maintained, and where possible enhanced. Specifically mentioned, Red Court Estate, privately owned, is a continuation of the beautiful Chase Valley and Fairwood Park, owned by the National Trust. This green space needs to be preserved as an area of transition between the built-up area of Hazelmere and the National Park boundary. This should be taken into account when determining any new building development. That conclusion, in my view, remains valid today and should be respected. I've referred previously to Tennyson as being a resident of Hazelmere, having built Aldworth, his house on Blackdown along the ridge from Red Court. Several of his poems are believed to be were written from there and inspired by the landscape of the area. One is The Dawn, which he wrote at Aldworth, which captures the quiet and ethereal transition from night to morning, much like the misty landscape of Blackdown. Flower in the Cranny Walls reflects his deep appreciation of the natural world, which he frequently observed in the Hazelmere Surrey Hills. Crossing Bars more directly about mortality in the sea, but it was written late in his life when he spent much of his time at Aldworth contemplating the views across vast skies and rolling hills, so intrinsic to the landscape beauty and character of this area. And it is worth mentioning that from Blackdown you can see glimpses of the sea. Tennyson frequently described Hazelmere's heather-clad heights and the rolling mists of Blackdown in correspondence about the beauty of this nationally important landscape. It is interesting that Hardy Country in Dorset is accorded special protection on account of its connection with the novelist. And there are moves afoot, of course, around the area of Chawton, similar protection being sought in connection with Jane Austen's association. Of course, this concept is borne out by the document I just referred to from Natural England. I believe the hills surrounding Hazelmere were worthy of similar protection for their association with Tennyson. If I may, I just refer again to Savile's own literature, and they clearly share this view. In their words, Hazelmere is a pretty market town in the picturesque countryside of the Surrey Hills. Often described as one of the gems of the Surrey Hills national landscape, Hazelmere is surrounded by glorious countryside. The Devil's Punchbowl is renowned for its spectacular views, while the South Downs National Park is nearby. So to my conclusion, I've already submitted that I do not believe it complies with policy considerations and suggested amendments to what I originally wrote. And I won't go through those technical descriptions again, not being an expert in such matters. But I would like to finish with some words. Actually, before I do that, I've just lost it, but I have got. Might have lost the page. Bear with me if you would for a moment. Yes, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So there was something that I added. I think I referred earlier to adding things from yesterday. Yes, I wanted to talk about the removal of the trees along the Midhurst Road. I think it is worth mentioning also that on the 12th of February this year, 6 of those trees proposed for removal and 3 further groups of trees, adding to 20 trees in total, were granted a tree protection order, and I believe the reference is 2024. But I think there are 3 comments in the which I put in my appendix that refer to those that I'd just like to draw attention. The Midhurst Road is a long gateway. The appellant's case, I think, is that the access road will only affect a short section of the road. So I think you'll see on your visit to the landscape, to the area, that the landscape on this road depends on it not being broken by such a large access junction, because the continuum of the gateway would be broken. Secondly, the interested person who commented clearly appreciates that the Midhurst Road is a sunken road, typical of the local landscape. Now, a lot was said yesterday about, no, it's not sunken. And I think the witness said, no, at the point where the gateway is proposed, it is not sunken. There are many roads around Hazelmere described as sunken roads, and if you travel any of them, you will find that while there are large areas where they are sunken in deep ravines, if you like, there are also areas where, as I said before, you can glimpse the countryside where they rise to a flatter level. But it's the totality, the whole, that needs to be considered, not the particular moment. You would not want to see a sudden sort of urbanization in the middle of what was otherwise a continuous experience. It's also worth referencing that in the Surrey Hills Environmental Design Guide, which is document NID 720, paragraph 3 of the introduction on page 1 does talk about lanes with their traditional charm. I think that's the essence of what we're seeking to protect. Finally, before concluding, the sloping countryside. I did comment in the first paragraph of paragraph 2 of my evidence about the sloped landscape. I think this is relevant in the context of the Surrey Hills. The Surrey Hills Design Guidance, which is document NID, I think it's NID 720. Not only states that development should be inside settlement boundaries. That's at paragraph 3.1 on, I'm not sure, page 7 on the hard copy. So, which is commenting on design, which is obviously not my main point, but it does say that building design in the area should respect the pattern of the settlement, its open spaces and greens. So it says it should contain development within the settlement, respect establishment, historic street and plot patterns, maintain variable building lines, respect the contribution of open spaces and village greens to character and form, and generally avoid closes and cul-de-sacs. Now, it seems to me that much was said about the gatehouse yesterday, as being a building that, if it's built as proposed, looks quite attractive, it would not meet that design statement. And there's also at 3.2 a comment about avoiding buildings on open slopes would convert the character of the setting. And I believe that that is pertinent to the proposed gatehouse. So to conclude, I just wanted to share a couple of quotes from Sir Robert Hunter, of whom I have spoken, and Alfred Lord Tennyson. I'll finish with a poem. So Sir Robert Hunter commented, "If we turn to natural scenery, we find that not even the most striking manifestations of nature are safe from the hands of man. In the exercise of power, in the furtherance of the subjection of nature to his rule, he has often the impatience and thoughtlessness of a child and will ruthlessly destroy beauty of appearance and association. The beauty of hill and vale, wood and water excites in us not merely a delight in colour and form, but a subtle sense of the vastness and permanence of the physical world, of the weakness of man, of the late birth of the human race, and of the fleeting character of human life. Natural beauty, equal with historical association, stimulates the imagination and takes the beholder out of the petty cares and the small details of everyday existence. If the nation is vigilant to save what is interesting and beautiful in its land and buildings, life will be better worth having for its citizens, not only of this day, but for centuries to come. And I would very much hope that we will honour that sentiment expressed by one of our illustrious previous residents." Finally, to quote Alfred Lord Tennyson, "You came and looked and loved the view, long known and loved by me, green Sussex fading into blue with one grey glimpse of sea." Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harrison. We rarely end evidence in chief with a poem. Very pleasant.
Might I just actually share a photograph of this one point that I did?
Only if you've got copies to hand.
I've got copies to hand, yeah. This is, one of the comments was made that you cannot see the site from, you cannot see the site from Gibbet Hill. I enclose here a photograph taken by Mr. Brown. And it's obviously taken with a zoom lens, but the point it's making is the green verdant strip that you can see across the middle of the enlarged part of the photograph is taken from Gibbet Hill and is the strip where the houses are intended to be built. So I'd just like to submit that that piece of evidence presented yesterday is not accurate. And of course, so if you'd like to visit Gibbet Hill along with your other visits, you're more than welcome to do so. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Just orientating myself on those photographs. Yep, that's fine. Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Brown?
Yes, if I can make a few little comments. Sure. I assume I'm allowed to, am I? Yes. Oh, it is questions, sorry, yes.
Yeah, questions or
Sorry.
points to be put to your witness, but not from you, if you understand the difference.
Mr. Harrison, can you just clarify on the environmental design guidance, ID 720, that it said about your slopes and development on open slopes? Because the document says development should be avoided on open slopes. Can you clarify that's what you said?
Yes. Yes, so 3.2 on page 7 says avoid development on skylines, prominent spurs and open slopes.
Thank you. You also inferred that traffic will be going up Belvale Lane to the Forest School and Scouts.
Actually, I think I've got that wrong. It's just
Yes.
the Forest School.
It goes
the Scout Hut would be accessed via the development and the main lodge route, I believe.
Yeah, so you're clarifying that it goes,
yes, so
will all go through the junction for the development.
Yes, but nonetheless, I think it is worth saying that the Forest School is likely to generate considerable traffic of minibuses and so forth. Thank you. Yeah, no, you're quite right.
You see, I got that wrong. Sorry.
I think that's right.
Anything further, Mr. Brown?
Only, can you clarify the position of light? Because there's going to be night light from the Scouts and the Forest School.
Yes. Yes, clarify. Well, I mean, just to say, I mean, obviously, the light on the ridge of the new proposed homes will probably have the broadest effect, simply because it's on an upper ridge, but nonetheless, well, and as you pointed out, the Scout hut is sort of up there as well. One doesn't really know at this stage what sort, I mean, most, certainly, I mean, if I could speak to, I don't live that far from where the Scout hut is currently located, and they do quite often do outside activities in the winter that need extra light in the open surrounds. So quite possibly, well, there won't be less light for sure. There will be quite a bit.
Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, I think I haven't broken any rules there, have I? No, thank you. In that case,
Clarification was Forest School isn't going to be accessed from Belvale.
Forest School isn't accessed from
Am I wrong about that as well?
Yeah, I think the Forest School is not going to be accessed from Belvale.
I think that could be picked up in cross.
Yes, we did say that. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I'm new at this game. So.
Okay, well,
Apologies.
I apologise for that, but it will, of course, increase traffic. in
I'm
the
sure
general area.
that'll be picked up, I'm sure,
Yeah.
in cross-examination. Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. 10:30, I'm inclined to go on for about half to 3/4 of an hour. So if you could find a natural break point there. As to the photograph that's just been submitted, probably easiest to deal with that with your witness. Is that the best way of dealing with it? Okay, happy to do that. Right. Thank you. Then over to you, Mr. Marici, for any cross-examination.
Thank you. I just want to check, first of all, I want to take you some documents. I wondered what you've got access to would be a good starting point. So, what have you got?
What have I got?
Have you got it all?
Physical
You've got it all. Oh, electronic's
I have,
fine.
yes, if
Okay,
you
well,
allow me
that's
to
fine.
open my,
That's fine.
my
let's just-
iPad, I will
let's just-
endeavour to.
Okay, let's just proceed on that basis, and I'll
Yeah,
ask you to
just
get out
let me-
documents.
If you just allow me to,
Yeah.
what's its Waverley? Actually, no, hang on, let me do it this way. Yeah, I think. Right, so I'm on the front page, which has core documents,
Okay.
NID and core documents.
Okay, that's good. Well, could we start, please, by just going to NID 8.4?
Yeah. Declaration Biodiversity, Ecology and Landscape, right?
that's the one.
Which is 2 pages long, right?
Yes, and on the second of the pages, if you could turn to the second of the pages.
Yep.
What I want to just ask you is, you obviously helpfully confirmed at the beginning of your evidence in chief that you're not giving evidence as an expert, yes?
Yes.
Now, there's a declaration given in relation to your evidence at the bottom of that table for community landscape, and
Yeah.
it says you confirm that the views are your true opinions, expressed your true and professional opinions.
Yes.
We need to strike out professional, don't we? Because you're not a professional on landscape.
I think you do, and I apologise for that. I mean, the reason, it's worth just elaborating a bit as to why I might have used that phrase. So like yourself, Mr. Ricci, I am a member of a profession, and while that has no bearing on landscape, it's got nothing to do with landscape, it does, of course, it does mean that I am bound by a code of professional ethics, which affects everything I do in every aspect of my day-to-day life. So I am bringing a professional ethical stance to bear, but you're right, I am absolutely not a professional in landscape, and if you feel it appropriate for it to be struck, I am happy for it.
I think so.
Be.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Fine.
I think
fine.
in fairness, the reason it's there is actually because that is the standard declaration that an expert is
Right, I
required
think
to
that's
give.
right.
And I asked that it be given for your expert
Yeah, well,
witnesses, which it has now been.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can
Yeah,
remove that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, some feedback off this. I wanted to just ask you, can we just pick up this point that you were discussing right at the end of your evidence about access to the site.
Mm.
So I think the best way to do this is, could you go to Mr. Smith's proof, which is NID 5.3?
Yeah. Part 1 or part 2?
Well, that's a good question. Probably part 1, I think.
Page number.
Oh, okay. We've actually got a spare hard copy if
Oh,
it's
that might be
easier.
Yeah.
That might be easier. Can you just turn up page 19?
Thank you. You're right.
So I think this is obviously showing the master plan, and I think
Yeah.
what you can immediately see is there is no vehicular access at all to any aspect of the development from Belvale Lane. It all comes in via the Midhurst Road and goes through the site. Yes.
Yeah, yes, you are correct. Where is the Forest School?
I think it's up
Yeah,
in-
Forest School is there. So
Yeah, I think
well,
it's.
how is it accessed? As a matter of curiosity,
Oh, yeah.
because it's not
Yeah.
entirely evident
So
to me.
what you would do
I
is,
think-
if you just
yeah.
follow it through, you come in the access, you
Right.
follow, you follow the access road around
Mm.
through the housing, through the housing scheme.
Right.
You come down, if you come down here, you pass through the housing, there's a little road that comes down here, there's a car park
Right.
down here, and then you walk to the Forest School.
Oh, I see. Forest School car
Yeah,
park is there.
It's the
Yeah.
clearing, yes, okay.
Yeah.
All right, now, so, I mean.
Yeah,
I'll-
no, so okay, fine. We'll
Yeah.
obviously strike that
Um,
from over. I may
yeah.
have been looking, the developers were kind enough to give me a copy of the original vision statement. It may have been different then, but.
Yes, I
I
think.
think I was probably referring to that. when
Yeah, I think a number of
drew it up,
people,
so, Yeah,
I think the truth is a number of people in their
yeah,
written and oral objections
yeah.
are still referring to the original
No, so I'm
proposals on
happy to
plans.
accept there
Yeah.
would be no
Okay.
adjustment to the traffic on Belvale
Well,
Lane.
I'll come back to one aspect on Belvoir Lane
Yeah.
later, but let's leave that for
Mhm.
now. Now, I wanted to ask you some questions about the Hazelmere Society, which you are chair of.
Fine.
I'm going to do that very briefly.
Yeah.
Now, as I understood it, you made very clear you're not a member of the HSRA, so I'm not going to be able to ask any questions about that.
Right.
So it's just
Good.
the Hazelmere Society. Now, you know, don't you, that we asked a series of questions about the position of the Hazelmere Society?
Yes.
And could I just ask you to look at those very briefly? So
I think,
could you go to Mr. Collins' appendices to his proof? So they should
Can
be
you give me the
in,
document
yes,
reference, right?
NID 5 it should be.
Mr. Collins, planning proof of evidence.
Yes, it
Yeah,
should be NID
okay.
5
Yeah,
1, I
yeah.
think. If you can go to that.
Sorry, it's just taking a while to load. I might need to get onto the Wi-Fi. Do you mind if I just do that? Because
Yeah, of course.
5G over here, it's 4G here.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, so I think I know the.
So it's NID
I think I know the
5.1.
password. It's all right, I know, don't shout. Terribly confidential and difficult to remember. Yeah, that's better. Good. Yes. So what page?
So
course.
could you go to, please, electronic page 309?
I don't know. There's a very quick way to do that.
Well, you can type 309 into the box on the side,
I
and then
don't
it will
think
go
on an
straight.
iPad I have a box, I'm
Ah,
afraid to say.
okay.
Oh, here we are. I've got to 323, so I should be able to get that quite quickly. Right. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, at the very bottom
Yeah.
of electronic 309,
Yeah.
these were questions that were put to you or put, I think,
Yeah.
in fairness to Mr. Brown, about parts of the Rule 6 Party. And just on the Hazelmere.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Hazelmere
Question
Society.
two.
Yeah, so 2. So A, please provide written constitution, memorandum of association, articles of association to Hazelmere Society. Then if you go down to the next page, please provide any minutes of meetings at which there's been any discussion of the scheme, seeking Rule 6 status, copies of any information or presentations made to such meetings. And just pausing there, none of that information has been provided, has it?
No, it hasn't. No. And may I just sort of say a little more about that?
Well, you can, yes.
Yeah. So I think I'm right in saying the letter was addressed to Mr. Brown.
Yes, it was.
And I believe he did respond and ask why it was being requested. And first of all, the minutes of our meetings are not a matter of public record. We do actually make them available for archival purposes to the Haslemere Educational Museum after a number of years. But they're not a matter of public record. So the view was taken at the time, there's nothing to hide, but that we couldn't understand why you would want them or why you would be asking
Yes.
that you're
Well,
entitled to.
I made a very full response to that.
Did you? I don't think
Yes,
I've
I
seen,
did.
I haven't seen that. So.
Well, I'm not going to spend any more time on it
No,
because
okay.
the bottom line is
Yeah,
we've
but-
asked for that and we haven't got it.
Right.
Okay. Now, the next questions were members of the HSRA, members of the Haslemere Society. That was
Yes.
put forward in opening.
Yes.
I'm not going to go back over that
Okay,
now.
fine. Yeah.
Now, the next one is, it's correct, isn't it, that both you and Mr. Brown are on the committee of the Haslemere Society?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Brown is a fellow trustee.
Okay. Now, I had a look at the Haslemere Society's website, and it's quite clear that you have, over the years, objected to quite a large number of planning applications in the town.
This is the case. Yeah.
Yes. I couldn't find, either on your website or anywhere else, any evidence that you'd ever supported a planning application in
That's a
Haslemere.
very interesting point, and it's a point that's quite frequently made to us actually, because you know, we're quite conscious of the accusation that we're a sort of no planning society. So just on that, I think the first point to make is that a number of our objections.
Sorry, just
Yeah.
to help me.
Yeah.
By all means qualify it, but
Mm.
the question essentially was have you at any time given support to any application?
Yes.
So is that a yes or a no, and then qualify it?
Right. Sorry, I apologise.
That's okay.
Have we ever given support to? Probably no. It's a probably no, I think.
By all means qualify.
Yeah. Yes, I think probably no is the answer. And we've been asked about that. And our response has been very much been, well, it's not our job to sort of write in, we say, this is fantastic, support us. Where we do object, we quite often object in details and about particulars rather than to the totality. So we would recommend improvements or draw attention to aspects. So essentially our focus is on the preservation of the character of the town and its surroundings. So we seek to make constructive comments, even though they are in the form of objections. But we've been quite clear that it's not our policy to be advocates for any development. It's just not, it's not what we do, but it's not to say we are against development, and we make it quite clear in statements to our members, both orally, and I'm sure you could find written documents if you looked hard enough, where we support sympathetic development in the town. I hope that helps.
You say you find examples of it, but I mean, are there actually any examples of you having supported a development in the town? I thought the answer was probably not.
Well, we've not submitted written
No.
submissions on it, but we do make alternative proposals for sites in our objections to things that we see.
Okay. Now, I mean, I've asked other witnesses this, so I'll just deal with it very briefly, but you accept, I assume, that we are in the midst of what the Secretary of State calls a national housing crisis, and we've got a local housing crisis.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Now, I just wanted to explore a little further with you some of the points that you made in your evidence. Now, just on this housing point, I mean, there is obviously a very strong need, isn't there, in this area and in Haslemere for affordable housing? Yes.
Yes, but so yes, there is, and that's essentially for key workers in the town. The but is that, and you will know better than I, but my understanding of the term affordable, it's a planning construct which refers to houses within the development that need to be sold at a discount to market value. And obviously the requirement is to numbers of properties, but not as to the type of properties. I would submit that the affordable properties as proposed in this development are not accessible to key workers, and they're neither accessible from an a financial standpoint, let's put it that way, given the price points that are likely to attach to the size of properties that are proposed. And I would submit also that they're not accessible from a logistical standpoint, because although there are submissions that suggest you can easily walk from here to the town and to the station and so forth, I would submit, or indeed to bus stops, I would submit that these properties will not be accessible to key workers or those on lower incomes for whom there is a desperate need in the town.
All right, well, let's break it down, shall we? There's unquestionably a very big need for affordable housing in this town, correct?
Yes, but as I
Yeah,
described.
okay.
Yeah.
There's unquestionably a need for homes full stop in this town and in Waverley and in the country.
Well, I would say in the country.
there's no.
And given that the government has chosen to allocate homes across the country, then
Okay.
it follows, yes.
All right. Now, you may not agree with the definition of affordable housing in planning, but that's not a matter for this inquiry, is it? Because the Secretary of State, the NPPF, the local policy, they define affordable housing, yes?
No, it's not.
No.
But it is relevant that
Okay.
the proposed affordable will not, in my
Okay.
view, do anything to address the housing challenges that are relevant to
Well,
this community.
well,
But it's not
yeah.
a policy,
No.
it's not a government policy point, but
Well, it is a
think
government
it's
policy point.
well,
The government tells
yeah.
us what affordable housing is,
Yes.
and we provide affordable housing.
yes,
Yeah,
but you
okay.
don't have to provide for, I mean, there are other developments proposed which are 1 or 2 bedroom flats, which would be far more
All right,
of
okay.
value to meeting the government's intended objectives,
Okay,
in my view.
next, please, just in
Yeah.
this breaking this down, I just want to understand this with you. I mean, I think this is a simple matter of economics, really, isn't it, about supply and demand? But there's an affordability crisis in this area. I think we're talking about the average house being 17 times the average income here, one of the highest in the country. The only way that you change that is by increasing supply. It's a simple matter of economics.
Mr. Ricci, neither you nor I is an economist, I would suggest.
Mhm.
And I think there are many economists who would completely refute that proposal, because, I can't imagine many developers that would want to, if you think the price will come down and developers will still want to pile in and produce houses given the high costs, I just don't think actually it works like that.
Well, if you provide 1.5 million more houses in the next 5 years, which is the government's policy, that increases the supply of houses in a very significant way, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, okay.
If
No-
you, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, the final thing was, I think you then went on to sort of suggest you didn't think that the site was in a sustainable location. Now, I don't want to particularly to spend time on this. You know, don't you, that we are in agreement with the council that this site is in a sustainable location in terms of sustainable travel modes, yes? You understand we've agreed?
Yes.
That? Yeah. And you understand also that Inspector Hockenhull, who determined the phase 1 application,
Yes.
considered the phase 1 site to be in a sustainable
Yes,
location.
I am aware of that.
Okay. Now, I just wanted to ask you this. I mean, you told us very eloquently about the fact that you yourself fell in love with Hazelmere and moved here in 1984. Now, trying to do some research myself about what house prices would have been then, we're talking about £30,000 probably for a house then. If other people are to be given the opportunity that you had to move to a beautiful place as young professionals, we're going to have to build more houses, aren't we?
No, I don't believe that's the only solution, but I don't know that we're here to debate the economics of how that might work. There are other.
Well, I think I've made my
that
point.
I can think of.
I've noted your answer. Now, I can make submissions about it, but I've noted your answer. Now, can we turn to some of the more substantive points in your proof, please, which I think you also made orally. First of all, on page 1, which is in your exec summary.
Yeah.
The first paragraph on your page
Yeah.
1. You see there's paragraph 1, it says the immediate landscape value of the Red Court site. And then you've got a paragraph immediately under that, third line down. Haslemere is the only settlement in Surrey surrounded on all sides by national landscape. Now, I mean, that is factually simply incorrect, isn't it? Because,
Well, I think,
yeah.
sorry.
So you've corrected that one,
Yes,
have you?
yes, it is,
Okay.
and I have made a
So,
correction.
I mean,
yes.
there are a number of other settlements, aren't there, that are completely washed over by the national landscape?
I could not find any in the Surrey, but please draw them to my attention.
Well,
So that's no, not as far as I'm aware.
so you don't think there are any settlements that are actually
Well,
washed
I mean,
over?
Be careful of size of settlement. I mean,
Okay.
I think I'm sure there's hamlets and
Okay,
villages.
so just to be clear, when you say settlements, you mean what, towns?
Towns, although
Right.
actually,
So what
I would
about,
add Cranley, which is the largest village. in
okay,
England
so
by
what
all
about
accounts.
places like Chiddingfold, Hambledon, Hascombe, Blackheath, Albury? They're all overwashed by the national landscape, aren't they?
Yes, I probably should have said significant settlement. I mean,
Right.
they are, you're right. But if we look at towns of any significant size, and let's not get into definition, but of any equivalent size or larger or close to the size of Haslemere, I believe that it holds true.
Okay. How many towns are there in Waverley of similar size?
In Waverley, well, there's Farnham, Cranley, Godalming and Haslemere.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Now,
I think they would agree with that.
now I wanted to ask you about this. There was a site visit organised by my client for members of the Rule 6 party to attend a few weeks or months ago now. I don't believe you attended that.
I did not know.
No. So, given that the vast majority of the site is private land, is it right that you've never actually been on site, or are you, like Mr. Petro and Mr. Cosgrove, like wanting to admit to trespass?
Taught no less. Wow. Is that a bit?
Have you been on
are
site?
right. Yes, you are right. I have
Okay.
never been on the site. I have circumnavigated the site,
Mhm.
but I have not been physically on the site at any point in time.
Good, thank you. Now, back to your proof, please. Under the heading so page 3, you've got a heading, the immediate landscape value of the Red Court
Yes.
site. Now, there have been a number of landscape character assessments undertaken by Surrey County Council, by Waverley and by my clients. You haven't referred or dealt with, have you, in your written or oral evidence, any of those landscape character assessments?
No, I haven't. No, and just to be clear, I've not read all of the documents that have been submitted. I'm not a full-time paid professional
No.
in relation to this. So.
Well, fair enough. Now, paragraph 1 under that heading, you say the site rising up on a considerable slope from the road level is visible from the Medhurst Road on entry into Haslemere. Now, I just want to ask you some questions about that. I think you said in chief that you believe that there would be visibility of the 110 houses which form the outline part of the planning application from the Midhurst Road. Now, in one sense, that's agreed because there is one of the AVRs which shows that in the winter you can just about make out the tops of some of the houses through the trees. But beyond that, obviously, the agreed position I got to with Mr. Petro, and it's Mr. Smith's position, is that there is hardly anywhere where you're going to see this housing from a public viewpoint. Can I understand that you don't agree with those professionals on that?
Yes, that is what I'm saying. It's my impression, having walked along and driven along that site and looking at this map that you've given me, that you would be able to see. So if you look at the north, I suppose that's the northwest corner, just to the south of Scotland Lane, I would be surprised if you could not see the back of those houses in the top portion there. I may be wrong, but that would be my impression. And my invitation to the inspector was on his site visit to form a view about that. I would also add, of course, that, and I think there was a lot of discussion about, once mature trees had bent up, etc. Now, I don't think you're denying they'd be visible to start with, but I do wonder. I'm not convinced, to put it that way.
Okay,
but,
you're not.
I'm just inviting the inspector to form his own.
Right, you're not.
view.
You're not.
And I am
convinced.
pointing out that those. I mean, those were photographs with superimposed impressions of where these would be, and we all
They're
know.
not. They're not just. I mean, that's
I'm sure
pejorative.
So
They
that's what I
are
intended to be.
accurate visual representations done in accordance with a very precise methodology. And by the way, they cost an absolute fortune to produce,
Right.
as you might imagine. But
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm referring to that evidence.
Yeah.
What we've got from you is your impression
Yes.
and the fact that you're not convinced. Correct.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Now,
Sorry, can I just interject? Sort of, I know what we're talking about. There was the AVR that we looked at yesterday, taken from,
Really looking
it
up.
was a bit south of the site entrance.
Yeah.
Looking across
Looking
the
out
site
beyond
entrance.
the lodge.
And
the hill. I think we're agreed about
We
that.
thought at that point that there was a sort of brown orangey colour in the background.
yes.
So we've got that one where it's agreed on the AVR that there is some visibility. Where are you saying?
So
Where are you saying I should go to get additional?
I think that from here, sorry, these houses would, I
So
know they're
rather-
higher up, but I
Yeah.
think they would be
So
visible.
rather than looking, as it were, up the new
Yes, the
roadway,
pictures was.
you go
was
further
looking
up
there.
Midhurst Road and look directly
think-
right.
That- That's my.
Okay. So yeah, up in this corner.
Yeah,
here.
where
Yes,
Mr.
exactly.
Rich is.
That's my belief.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
And
And so, I mean, obviously, that's why you,
Yeah.
I think, talk to me about. Obviously, it's going to depend then, isn't it, on what vegetation goes in that corner. That's why you raised that point.
Yes,
Because that's what.
correct.
Obviously, okay. Thank you. All right, that's helpful. Thank you. Now, just a few other things on this. You mentioned towards the end of your evidence in chief the tree protection order that's been placed. Now, I mean, I don't know whether you know this or not, but obviously if we're granted planning permission to do this, if we are, that effectively overrides the tree protection order. Did you appreciate that that's the fact?
Yes.
Yeah. And secondly, that TPO was made, I think, either, I can't remember now whether it was at the end of or towards the end of the last inquiry. And it's a TPO that's been made on the basis that a planning application has been made for the site. It's quite common these days for TPOs to be made so that developers can't take down trees in advance of planning permission.
Yes, and in fact, it's one of the few, as I understand it, it's one of the few bases on which you can request a TPO.
Yeah,
You have to be able to demonstrate you think the tree's
Yeah.
at risk. I think
Okay.
that's right.
Now, then the final thing about just on Midhurst Road, you referred to the sunken lane point, and where we've got to on that is that in the area where we are putting the access on Midhurst Road, it's agreed between Mr. Petro and Mr. Smith that that is not a sunken lane. Anywhere around the access at all is not sunken. In fact, and we'll invite the inspector to look at it, but it's actually the reverse of a sunken because the land falls away. So it's actually a raised road at that point. But you understand that in that sense, it's not a sunken road, is it? And that's been agreed by the two experts.
Yes, but the point I am making is that whether you call it a sunken road or a verdant period or whatever language you use, this is a road of outstanding beauty and enjoyment to travel, and that putting that lodge in and the road up will adversely influence that. Now, whether we argue the semantics of sunken there or sunken elsewhere, the point I am simply making is that, so I'll give another example. For example, Farnham Lane in Hazelmere, on the other side of the town, which has been a subject of much discussion about traffic and so forth for different reasons, is referred to in many public places as a long, narrow, sunken lane. There's large parts of it where it's not at all sunken, and you look down over the valley. So, I mean, let's not, I think it's semantics. I accept at that point it's not, but my point is that really one has to consider the overall character of the road and the route along the length of it.
But I mean, the word sunken has an ordinary English meaning, doesn't it?
I,
And it's not met in this area, correct?
yes, if you will
Yes.
have it that way.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Now, in addition, when you were giving your oral evidence, you introduced this photograph, which I'll deal with Mr. Smith. But you understand that it's agreed between the landscape witnesses that there will be no visibility from Gibbets Hill.
Yes, I understand that has
Yeah.
been said as
Okay.
agreed, but I believe that they may be wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a zoomed in photograph.
Yes, it is. Of
Yeah.
course it is. But you can't zoom in on something you can't see. Admittedly, it wouldn't be as visible as that
Yes.
photo might
But-
suggest, but it is still visible.
But I could see the site from the moon if I had sufficient zoom, couldn't I? I mean, it's not a natural view by a human being, is it?
I
We
think,
can't
I
zoom.
think, well, no, it's not.
No.
But
Okay.
I think, you know, if you say something is not visible,
Mm.
it means you cannot see it. Now, for example, if you go to Gibbet Hill, you can see London, which is a lot further away. You can see the Shard.
Mhm.
It's not as it would appear in that photograph, but it is visible as that clearly is. So it would influence the overall view. It wouldn't be, because of the distance, it wouldn't be in your face, but you would
No.
see it. And I think the moon is, with the naked eye, I would say also, which is an important point.
Right, okay. Now,
Sorry, just staying on that
mm.
photo for a moment. I know we're going to come back to
Yeah.
the photograph. Do you happen to know what lens that was taken
I
with?
think Mr.
I mean, if you
Mr.
don't, that's fine.
Well, Mr. Brown, I think you have probably,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
you took it, so you can probably look
It was
up.
done with a standard digital camera, and it was I think it's a 200mm lens.
200.
So
Okay,
it's
thank
not
you.
massive.
The
So
metadata, if you still got it, would it?
I've got all the metadata if I can pull it off if you needed it, but it is visible. So
I
you
think
can
that's all we need to know because there
Okay,
are
fine.
there are ways in which photographs should
For
be
sure.
taken for this,
As-
but that's
as
fine.
point I
Now,
already made.
Okay. Now, just talking about visual and viewpoints, I think the final thing I wanted to address on that, in terms of your evidence, really, is you accepted, I think, in your evidence in chief very fairly that you had misunderstood the position in terms of Belville Lane, and there would be
Yes,
no
I did.
visibility of any built form
Yes, I
from
did.
Belville Lane. Okay, thank you. So I won't ask you obviously anything more about that. Now, could we look again at your proof, please, at paragraph 3 on page 4? So, paragraph 3, page 4. If allowed, the development would cut a significant slice out of the outstanding natural beauty of outstanding natural beauty out of the landscape, and would irreparably harm its beautiful landscape setting and view on the approaches to the town and south. So there are 2 points I want to just talk to you about on this. I mean, the first one is, I mean, you understand, don't you, that even if permission is granted, the whole site will remain in the national landscape.
Yes, I do understand that.
Yeah. For example, we talked about settlements like Chiddingford, which are actually fully within the national landscape. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Now, secondly, have you looked at Mr. Smith's figures about what the area of the national landscape is compared to the area on which we are building? Have you looked at those figures?
I don't think I have, if I'm right. So that would be a no. But I think it's about 22% that is being developed.
Well, no, that wasn't quite what I was putting to you.
Okay, sorry.
No, so we know only 22% of the site is
Right,
being
okay.
developed,
Yeah.
and 78% left. But can I ask you, it's probably easier if we go to it. So if you go to Mr. Smith's
Okay.
proof, which you should have in NID 5, but we gave you a hard copy, didn't we?
No, it's the,
Didn't we
it's
give
this-
you, we
right,
gave you
sorry,
a hard
yeah.
copy,
So
didn't we?
page-
So if you go to, it's paragraph 4.72, which is on,
yeah, I got it. No, hang on, 4.7.
I think that's right.
I haven't got a
Yeah,
4.7.
4.7,
I've got 4.7, but not 4.7.
4.72.
Oh, 72, sorry.
4.72. No, the reason I'm going to this is because the way you've described it is that a significant slice would be cut out of the OMB. And at 4.72 on his page 37, He says, in relation to the wider national landscape, the appeal site's a very small component of the landscape. A designation of 422 square kilometres. So that's the current size of the national landscape, of this national landscape, potentially expanding to 549 square kilometres. That's the proposals by Natural England to expand it. LCA 1 and 2 are 0.051 square kilometres. So, I mean, I guess all I would ask you on that is, in relation to that, you don't dispute those figures, do you, as a calculation of what amount of the overall national landscape would be affected by built form?
No, I have no reason to dispute those figures.
Despite that, your language, you maintain, I assume, your language, that would constitute a significant slice of the national landscape. Is that right?
Yes, I do. And again, I would draw attention to the extract that I referred to about the accretive nature. So I need to get back to that reference, but you know, this would also further, were it allowed, it would further accrete the invasion into the.
Oh, we'll come to that point in a moment.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, we'll come to that point in a moment about accretion.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you about next is on the same page of your proof, just after the paragraph we've read, 3, paragraph 4, you say the undulating landscape at this end of the North Downs.
Sorry, can you page 4?
Sorry, page 4 of your proof.
Yeah.
Paragraph 4.
Yeah, sorry.
The undulating landscape, with the town sitting in the valley, gives rise to many beautiful landscape vistas. Now, if you've got Mr. Smith's proof again, please, could you turn to the next page on, which is page 38, and look at paragraph 4.75.
Yeah.
So Mr. Smith is looking at the visual receptors, i.e. all of those places where one might see the development from. It says none of the visual receptors are listed strategic views, views annotated for scenic importance on an OS. Now that's correct, isn't it? There is no recognition in any guidance, policy or OS of any views of the site from visual receptors.
Yes, I believe that is correct. Although I would also, I think I'm right in saying that that would refer to, so if you were looking at an ordnance survey map, you'd be talking about viewpoints that have that sort of. And, you know, I would simply make the point that there aren't that many of those, and those are points where, you know, people are encouraged to stop off and look at views, but it does not for a minute mean that they're the only places that it's worth viewing surrounding countryside from. So yes, I do accept that, but I dispute the significance of that point.
It's not just that it's not an OS, but there are references to particular views of importance in the management plan, in other guidance documents. There are no such views recorded in respect of any of the view receptors for this site, are there?
No, there are not, and I don't know. Probably Gibbet Hill would be. I haven't looked at the OS map too, but there probably aren't many in Hazelmere. But it doesn't distract from the comments.
Well, that comes. That comes back to the dispute between you and I. But not between Mr. Petro and Mr. Smith about whether Gibbet Hill is a visual receptor for the site or not. But we've dealt with that one. Okay. Now, could we then go to paragraph 5 on your page 4 of your proof? You say at the bottom of that paragraph, building on this site would not just degrade the view to the east, it would undermine the whole sense of the boundary of the town at this point. Now, I just wanted to ask you about that, because I think you also say in paragraph 6 that you're concerned that the development would go a long way to closing the gap between Hazelmere town and the next collection of buildings to the south. Now, just on these points that you've made, I made this point yesterday, but it's correct, isn't it, that the sign for the town of Hazelmere is at the junction of Midhurst Road and Bell Road, correct?
I think it's Bell Road, the road where you turn to Camelsdale. I think it is, isn't it? Yes, it is. Yes, that's correct. Okay.
Now, there is obviously housing on Midhurst Road, on Belville Lane. There are individual houses, aren't there, in various locations?
There are, yes.
Are those part of Hazelmere?
No, they're not.
No, they're not. Okay. Now, you refer to closing a gap between Hazelmere and I assume you mean those properties that we've just talked about that lie outside of Hazelmere, in
Yes,
your
and
view?
you'd go down to something was called down, Kingsley Green and
Right.
beyond there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
again, I mean, planning policy often protects specific gaps
Yes.
between towns or settlements or villages,
Mm.
or there is no specific gap policy, is there, in relation to Hazelmere and any of the buildings to its
No,
south?
not that I'm aware of. And of course, that area is within the South Downs National Park and is therefore
Yeah.
somewhat protected
And
by
then
that.
can I ask you again, if you've got Mr. Smith's proof there, to go to page 19 of his proof
Yeah.
again, which we looked at earlier.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can see, for example, can't we, on this plan, if you look along Belvelle Lane, there are a number of individual properties that lie along the Belvelle Lane. And I think you're right, they must actually be in the national park. They are in the national park.
Correct. Then, well, mostly because they're on I think it's the right-hand side of the road
Yeah.
is the border, is it not?
Yeah, okay. Now, just in relation to that, you talk about the narrowing of the gap, but the built form of our development is obviously to the northern part of the site, closest to the town. And between our housing and the housing one sees running along Belvelle Lane, we have the parkland, the middle woodland, much of which is Sang, and the nature reserve at the bottom. So there would be, wouldn't there, even if our scheme was built, a significant green gap between our housing and housing on Belvelle Lane? Yes?
Yes, there would.
Yeah. And also, because we are in the Section 106 obligation committed to making this land SANG, suitable alternative natural green space, it has to be provided as such in perpetuity and managed as such in perpetuity. So effectively, the edge of Hazelmere here will be fixed for all time because you will not be able to build on the SANG ever.
Sorry, just for clarification, is it in perpetuity?
In
Sang?
perpetuity,
Okay,
Sang,
yes.
yeah.
Well, in that case, the answer to your question is yes.
All right, thank you. That's helpful. Now, yes, so that is a convenient break point.
Okay. Thanks very much indeed. Let's take a break. 10 past, let's resume at 11:30. Can I just have a quick word about the live stream?
Oh, yeah,
Because
sure.
the live stream seems to be focused on Mr. Marici all the time, clearly photogenic. I'm
upset.
I'm told by a colleague, another inspector who dipped in to look, that it's quite difficult to follow because they are looking at the advocate.
Yeah.
They can hear the witnesses reply, but it's a slightly odd transition. I don't know, to be honest. It was working okay yesterday, I think.
Yeah, you did the
A
camera.
number of occasions actually where the person who was speaking there didn't get picked up for whatever. I don't know whether that microphone's a bit far.
No,
back.
it's,
no.
I mean, can you hear me in the room? Because if I go any closer, I start to echo. Is that better? Oh, it's possibly because you've got both mics on. So if you
I turn
turn,
mine on.
so if we
Yeah,
take it
then
in
it gets
turns to turn our mics off. maybe
Yeah, I mean,
that's the-
I only make the point
Yeah,
because
sure.
obviously if people have been invited to watch on the live stream, I've got no idea who is apart from a colleague of mine. But if they have been invited, they obviously need to get the best possible.
Shall we
image.
take it in turns to turn our microphones off?
I'm
Excuse
afraid
me,
you're
I'm
gonna
happy
have
do
to.
that. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thanks. Okay, what time did I say? 11:30. Thank you. Okay, 11:30, let's resume. Mr. Marucci, any idea on time estimates?
Probably about another 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think at that point we'll take an early lunch and then we can move straight on after lunch to your witness. So we'll break for lunch probably 12:15-ish. Okay, over to you then,
Thanks,
Mr. Marucci.
So, Mr. Harrison, can I ask you to go, you referred in your evidence in chief to the Surrey Hills Environmental Design Guide. Can you just get that out for me? It's NID 7.20.
I've got a hard copy of extracts, so I'm not sure.
All right, well, let's go.
where-
I think it's one of the
where-
extracts that you went to, so that should
Okay.
be easy. So it's just trying to find the page numbers on the page. So I think it's page 7. Yes, page 7. You went to, I think, section 3.1 in your evidence in chief, if you recall.
Correct.
Yeah.
And two.
Okay. Now, the heading is respect the pattern of the settlement. And I'll come to the other words that you referred to in a moment. But in terms of this pattern of the settlement, there is an issue I discussed briefly with Mr. Petro yesterday about whether he was pursuing any case on a landscape basis about impact on the settlement pattern. And he was not pursuing any point about impact on the settlement pattern. But I think your point is slightly different. You refer to the text just after that heading, which says contain development within the settlement, yes? And your point is, as I understand it, our scheme is not within the settlement boundary, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, just to understand the significance of that, where does that take us? Is that you suggesting that this is one respect in which we do not comply with this guidance, or are you saying this guidance is not relevant to our scheme because it's not within a settlement and this is only dealing with development in settlement?
I think the point I was simply trying to make was that, the overall heading is the building design in the Surrey Hills. And now, and the headline of respect the pattern of the settlement, and simply making the point that, particularly in the case of the lodge, there is a building that is out with the pattern of the settlement. I think it was no more than that.
I mean, if you look at the text above paragraph 3.1, it says the following principle should be adopted for all forms of development within the Surrey Hills AONB, whether inside or outside settlement. So it's recognising, isn't it, that you can actually, consistent with this guidance, be providing development outside of settlements, yes?
Yes, it is indeed, although of course development would include the adaptation of an existing brownfield site as well as new greenfield site, and I think there is a distinction to be drawn between the two.
Well, it would, but
yeah,
it would, but I mean, it's not so confined, is it? This would apply to any development outside of a settlement.
In its language, the overall headline does apply to either, but I still submit that it could be argued that does not. It's not a major point, but does not respect the pattern of the settlement.
Okay, so just to be clear, where I think we've got to is that you're alleging in this one respect that there is non-compliance with this guidance. I mean, obviously, I agreed with Mr. Petro; he wasn't alleging any non-compliance with this guidance. But you say your case is, just so I can understand it, your case is there is or might be, in your view, non-compliance with 3.1.
Yes, that is correct.
All right, thank you. Now, we can move on from that. Now, you made some reference in your, if we can go to your proof again, please. Pages 10 and 11, I think. Let's start on page 10. So on page 10, para 4, Roman 9, you refer to Marianne Julia James donated portions of her acquired land in Nutcombe Valley and Tyndall's Wood to the National Trust. And then you say, as part of the A3 Hindhead Tunnel scheme, the government constructed a high-quality footbridge to maintain the integrity of the site. And then in paragraph 5, you talk about the existence of the National Trust owes much to the inspiration of the area. You refer to the co-founders, etc. Now, the position in this case is that the developer, if this planning permission were to be granted, through the Section 106 obligation, will be dedicating around 30 acres of land for public access in perpetuity. That should be recognised, shouldn't it, as a beneficial thing, and frankly, as consistent with the kind of things you're talking about here of land being given in this area to the public.
Yes, you could argue that, or you could also argue that it would be consistent with this to give the entire site to the benefit of the public and the National Trust.
Yeah, that's good one. Yeah.
Well, you can, you can laugh, but that's what these people did with no economic benefit to themselves. So I need to make that point. Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, I wanted to ask you a different point. In your proof, I think it's back on page 4, you deal with this, and you mentioned it again in your chief, which is the proposal to convert footpath 597 into a bridleway seems absurd and dangerous. Now, I just want to understand with you what is proposed here. Obviously, you know, don't you, that we are diverting a part of the footpath into the site, yes?
Yes, correct.
And as part of that, obviously, we have to make a financial contribution to Surrey County Council in order for them to affect that diversion,
Right.
if it's permitted. And they have asked for the money that we give to include money to allow them, if they so deem it appropriate, to turn it into a bridleway. So it's not what we're proposing, it's what the County Council want money for in case that's what they do want to do.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. I was not aware of that, and of course, I don't necessarily agree with everything that Surrey County Council agrees with. But thank you.
No,
for pointing
fair
that
enough.
out.
But
Yeah.
that's a matter you could take
Yeah.
up with them rather
Fair
than
enough.
with me.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Now, in your proof again, please, paragraph 9 on page 5. This was something that you talked about again in your evidence in chief. Tranquility. So I want to talk about tranquility with you for a moment. Now, you raise here 2 issues, which is noise and light. So I will explore those with you. But before we do, the point that you made in evidence in chief, or a point that you made in evidence in chief, was that the provision of the Forest School and the Scouts facility within the national landscape would itself have an impact on tranquility, i.e. there would be activity where currently there is none. Yes?
Yes, I imagine you would agree.
Well, yes, I would agree to that extent, of course. But the position is, of course, that at the moment there is no public access to any of that land, is there? Correct?
Yes, correct.
And it's also clear, isn't it, from national policy, from Natural England guidance, from other guidance, that it is an imperative that the government sets to try and encourage access to national landscapes.
Yes, that is also correct.
And the provision of the Scout facility in the national landscape, the provision of the Forest School in the national landscape, is a way of encouraging access to the site for children.
Yes, it is.
Now, can we turn to the specific points that you raise about tranquility in paragraph 9? You say in paragraph 9, there is no source of noise or light pollution here. Now, let's take noise first. The appeal site runs along the Midhurst Road, which is an A road, an arterial road, and a very busy road. So the site is affected, isn't it, by noise from the A road?
Yes, I accept that that was carelessly worded because it is clear that the road, I think I said that in my oral submission, the road clearly does generate noise,
Yeah.
but there's no other source, I think.
No, and because you've not been on the site itself, You're not able to say, are you, how far that noise travels within the site at the moment because you've not been on the site?
I think I have to agree. Yes, that is the case. Yes, yes.
And the housing that we are providing, if you remember, it's page 19 of Mr. Smith's proof. The housing that we're providing, some of it is in relatively close proximity to the A road, but all of it is in close proximity to the existing settlement. And there will be some noise associated with an existing settlement, won't there?
Yes, there will.
Thank you. That's helpful. Now, on light, please, on light, you mention the dark skies position, and you refer, I think, to CPRE's light pollution and dark skies map. You give those figures, and then you say the second darkest night sky categorization in the country. Now, I just want to be clear on that before we look at some of the documents on this. Are you saying that the appeal site itself falls within the second darkest night sky categorization?
I don't think I can answer yes or no to that specifically. Obviously, I've looked at the map, and the map zooms into certain levels of detail, but it's quite hard to get that granular. I think the point I would make is that I am certainly saying that if it does not itself, because obviously there would be some light from both the new development as phase 1 and Scotland Close, but that the light generated from it will radiate out and impact the light, particularly in the South Downs National Park. So whether it will affect, well, I mean, obviously it will affect the light in the settlement because there'll be people living there, but the main point is about its pollutive impact on the park to the south.
Yeah, but I mean, the housing that we're providing is provided in the furthest point away from the national park boundary, correct?
Yes, that is correct, but it's the highest point, I think, also correct.
And it's also, the housing is provided in close proximity, as you've mentioned, to the existing houses on Scotland Close and the phase 1 scheme where there is already light, correct?
Yeah, yes, but it's, I think it's above Scotland Close by 4 or 5 meters, and I believe it's at a higher elevation than phase 1, although I'd be corrected if I'm wrong in that.
Well, of course, I mean, light is obviously different to visual
For sure.
effect, but we also know, don't we, that from Belvale Lane, we won't actually see any of the houses at all.
You will see the light though.
Yeah, well, we'll come to that in a moment, but the fact that there are the fact that there is intervening topography and wooded vegetation will reduce light impact at the south.
Well, I could express that differently. Or say if there were not, there would be greater impact. I don't think it's quite the same thing.
All right, fair enough. Now, the other thing is it's common ground between ourselves and the local planning authority that there is no objection from the South Downs National Park Authority to the scheme on light or indeed on other grounds, correct?
Yes, if you tell me that's the case.
Now, I was going to ask you to look at a document. What I might do is I might give you my copies. It's easy to find. So this is CD 2.54, and it's part 3. It's the appendices to the landscape visual impact assessment. And what I was going to ask you to do in that, please, is could you go to it's page 97 of the numbered pages, and it's electronic page 31 for those who are following it electronically. And so this is a plan that the National Park, as I understand it, produced South National Park lighting dark sky zones. So they have various zones set. And you'll see that they have E0 is the dark sky core, and that's, you can just see it at the bottom of the page, furthest to the south on this plan. You then have E1A, the next category, which is in, have you got that? Page 97.
Yeah, I'm sort of getting there. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So you see the dark blue,
Right,
which you can see,
see.
blobs of at the bottom of the
Yes.
page. That's the dark sky core,
Right.
yeah, of the national park.
okay,
We've then got their next zone is E1A, intrinsic rural darkness, that's called.
right.
And you can
which is
see,
where this sits.
yeah, where that
Yeah.
sits. And then you've got E1B, a transition zone in blue. So that's the next phase.
Yeah,
And then beyond that, the site is actually not, because it's not in the national park, is not within any of those categorizations. It lies
right.
beyond the transition zone.
right,
Yes.
got it.
Okay, so you understand that.
Yeah, I
if we-
understand what it's showing me.
Yeah. And if we want to know perhaps why the South Downs National Park are not objecting on light grounds, this probably helps us, doesn't it?
It probably does, because presumably their concern is for the E1A and E0 zones.
Yes, yes, I think that's correct. Now, if you then go to the next page, page 98, we see the point that you accepted a moment ago. This looks at existing light sources. So you can see, for example, in the existing town, but there are also existing light sources in the national park itself, in what we've just seen as the transition zone. And then you can see that it says yellow areas, although they look green to me, but yellow areas indicate areas of new light sources associated with the proposed development. And we see the point, don't we, that you've very readily accepted, that the source of the light that we would generate on the whole is that located closest to the existing light sources in Hazelmere.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. And then if you look at the next couple of pages, figure 10.18.1, this is viewpoint 1 from Valewood Park looking back towards Hazelmere, which lies beyond the ridge. And then the next page, viewpoint 2 from the recreation ground looking towards residential properties on Old Hazelmere Road. And you can see that Hazelmere itself is already generating a glow in the night sky, as you'd expect.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then similarly, there are other, I don't think we need to look at this, but if you go on the next few pages, the document looks at other existing light sources. I don't think page 901 is that relevant, but that is one of the light sources there is in the area.
Sure.
But you can see 102, you've got Scotland Lane light sources. Someone's got one of those really super bright
Yes.
lights that you see in prisons. But okay, and then you've got, again, if you go to page 103, 104, again, you've got existing light sources on Scotland's Lane and Scotland's Close. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the context in which one has to judge those impacts, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Thank.
Interesting.
All right, okay, let's move on to just a couple of other things that I need to cover with you. So first of all, on the light issue, did you yourself look at what the environmental statement that we've submitted concluded about the level of impact from light?
No, I did
No,
not.
okay. Well, I'm not going to go to it, but I'll give the reference for the inspector's benefit. It's CD 2.29. And it's paragraphs 10.3.84 to 10.3.89 on electronic page 37. And it's table 10.16 in the same document on electronic page 84. The impact on the nightscape is concluded to be negligible. But you've not looked at that yourself.
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you. Now, just a few other things on the sort of substantive points. On page 9 of your proof, you have a heading Hazelmere and its surroundings, and it says a settlement of great landscape value. And I just want to understand what you mean by that, because, I mean, a number of settlements, as we discussed earlier, smaller ones mostly, are washed over by the national landscape. So they are considered to be appropriate to include within the national landscape. Hazelmere itself, I don't really understand the reasoning, but Hazelmere itself is not, is it, in the national landscape?
No, it's not, and I suspect it's because it's deemed to be a major settlement and therefore outside it. But again, I don't know enough about the history or the piece for that to be the case. It is considerably bigger than any of the places. I don't know what the population of Chiddingfold is. Perhaps someone can help me, but I imagine it's maybe 2,000. I don't know. Whereas Hazelmere's closer to 20, I think.
Yes, closer to 20,000, I think.
Yeah,
is
so I
correct.
think, I think it's simply a matter of scale. And obviously there's villages and hamlets throughout Surrey that are, as you say, washed over.
Yes, that's correct. Now, but I mean, what that shows, I mean, your statement that it's a settlement of great landscape value and the fact that there are other settlements, smaller ones that are washed over by the national landscape, I mean, that just goes to show, doesn't it? It illustrates a point that we discussed yesterday with Mr. Petro, that settlement itself can be part of the character of a national landscape.
Yes, it does. And I'd simply say, I mean, that is a heading. We could argue about the precise wording of it, but I think it's the content of the section behind the heading that is really the major thrust.
Okay. Now, just finally on that, I mean, obviously the current edge of the town in the location of the appeal site is constituted by the backs of the houses in Scotland Close and their back gardens. So these are, I think they're 1970s or 80s development. I think that's what the design and access statement says. I mean, they're not, or maybe they might be 60s, I don't know. 62.
Sorry, Mr. Brown lives
62.
there, so that's what I
Now,
was looking at.
with all due respect to Mr. Brown, I mean, the edge that currently provides to the town is not a particularly attractive edge, is it? And the houses are facing back, which is not what one would seek in design terms today.
I'm sorry, I don't really understand the point you're making. I mean, the houses are built into the hillside effectively, so I don't understand the point.
Well, they're very visible, aren't they, from the appeal site itself, which is in the national landscape, those houses.
From the appeal site itself, I don't know the answer to that question.
Because you haven't been.
Well, no, I haven't been to the appeal site. No, you haven't below it, but I do think they sit below it. I have been to Scotland Close. I don't know. I mean, I can't, I think definitively answer that, but I would have thought they're not that visible.
They sit below it, i.e. you look down on them.
Well, I think you look over them. I'm not sure.
Well,
I don't know. I just do not know, because as you rightly point out, I have
haven't
not
been.
trespassed.
I know. Very well behaved, indeed. Now,
Absolutely.
now, okay, well, I'll leave that. I mean, obviously, there are images that we looked at yesterday with Mr. Petro showing what you can see from the edge of the town from the appeal site. Now, just to pick up a few other things, you went in your evidence in chief to CD 7.9, which is the management plan. And I wondered if you could go back to that. I wanted to go to the bit that you had yourself raised.
CD 7.9 I referred to. Yeah, sorry. Might have to look. Oh, here we are. Yes. The Surrey Hills Management. Yes. Yes. That was my point about Sturt Farm and the accretive development. Is that the point?
Yes, it was. And I just wanted to go back to the, if we could, to the passage that you rely on for those observations.
Yep.
Now, I think it's numbered page 32.
Probably need to get the document up. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you will. So it's electronic page, I think electronic page 17.
7.9. Oh, sorry. See, it's the original core document. Yeah. So get there in the end.
Yeah, so CD 7.9.
There we are. Right. Getting there. Yes, the management plan.
Now, just remind me, the passage that you were
So
relying on is on this page, isn't it?
section 9 at the third paragraph. So that would be. Sorry.
Is it, if you look at the third paragraph on
Yeah,
page
sorry, I'm
32,
just trying to-
it says I think at the bottom, at the end of the first
Can
line.
you, if you're there, could you
Yeah.
tell me what page it is?
So it's electronic page 17. It's numbered page
13.
Electronic 17.
17, sorry.
Numbered page 32.
Yeah, I've got it right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And the third paragraph, I think, is what you were referring to. If you look at the end of the first line, it says special care needs to be taken over siting volume and design to ensure that their impact on the
That
landscape
is correct,
does not.
yeah.
So that was your accretion point, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
But if you look at the first sentence, which you didn't read, the increasing impact of replacement buildings in part of the Surrey Hills is an issue. So that guidance that follows is directed at a specific issue, which is the impact of replacement buildings, it's not a generic piece of guidance, for other forms of development, correct?
I see what you're saying.
And that's correct, isn't it?
Well, I mean, yeah, fairly correct. I mean, obviously Sturt Farm had a farm on it, but there was not much building. It was mainly
All right.
land. So I wouldn't. Yeah.
I'll at this stage,
Yeah.
I'll accept fairly correct. It's good enough for my purposes. Now, I think the other issue I just want to touch on this same point, really. Well, there's actually a couple of things, I suppose. The first one is that you obviously made the point about Sturt Farm, which is a site that we know the council itself granted permission for in the national landscape. I mean, the position is that national policy allows major development in a national landscape, so long as you can show exceptional circumstances, correct?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
Now, in addition, I think it's also correct that in your proof, you deal with a couple of the policies in the management plan that we have got on page 33 of the management plan. So it's the next page from the one we were just looking at. And in your proof, the two that you raise, and this is on page 13 of your proof, are policies P1 and P6, yes?
Yes, correct.
Now, in relation to P1, I think you've accepted in your evidence in chief that that's obviously a planning balance policy. So it's not something that you're directly yourself covering because you're giving community landscape evidence.
Exactly.
Right. That's fine. So I won't ask you about that. But P6, can I just ask you about that for a moment? Because this is a policy that's not alleged to be breached by the council in the management plan. P6, development that would spoil the setting of the AONB by harming public views into or from the AONB will be resisted. I mean, that's a policy about protecting the setting of national landscapes. Our site's not in the setting of the national landscape, it's actually in the national landscape, isn't it?
Your site, yes, your site is in the national landscape.
Okay.
So,
yeah. That might be why the council not raising that policy in relation to this scheme. Now, just on that, I mean, obviously I put the same question to Mr. Petro. He also chooses, I think, to allege breach of two policies in the management plan. He alleges P1 and P2. You say P1 and P6. But I must take it from the fact that you've not alleged any other breach of any of the management plan policies, that it's not the Rule 6 parties case to suggest that of all the other multitude of policies in the management plan that we breach any of those.
With regards to landscape value, I can answer a yes to that because that's what I was looking at. But obviously, there's other aspects that are being looked at by other members of the group, and I'm not sure whether they apply or not.
All right. So, I mean, for example, we've got an ecology witness. So if there's something on ecology,
no,
that's
exactly.
for them.
I mean, that's
fine.
exactly.
But on landscape, those are the only two that you allege to be breached.
Yes, correct.
That's helpful. Thank you. Now, I also wanted to ask you about this. You mentioned a number of times in your evidence, and indeed you ended with this, about literary associations with the landscape of the national.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, this came up at the previous inquiry, and I just want to ask you this. The inspector at the previous inquiry asked a question of Mr. Petro, which was whether he was aware of any evidence of any literary associations with the appeal site itself? And Mr. Petro's answer was no. Are you aware of any evidence of any literary associations connected to the appeal site itself?
No, I am not with regards to the exact site itself. But clearly the literary associations are with the wider area in the broader context.
Thank you. Can I then also ask you, you referred to ID 5.3 in your evidence in chief. So can we go to ID 5.3? So that's
yeah.
the, sorry, yes,
Guidance for assessing landscapes.
That's correct,
but
yes.
Yeah. Again, I may not have the physical pages you want to refer to. But
Okay, well, let's just see where we go. So could you go to section 6, which I think is a section you took us to?
Yeah, it is. Yes,
So you should have that.
Good.
So that's a section on natural
beauty, yeah.
And I think you took us to 6.1, didn't you?
I did.
And did you also take us to 6.2?
Don't think I did.
No, okay. Well, can I ask you, just looking a little bit further at this document, if you look at 6.3, Natural England's view is that wildlife and cultural heritage can contribute to the perception of natural beauty of all landscapes. So that's their position. You can take into account cultural heritage and biodiversity, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And then if you look at 6.4, during the passage of the NERC bill through Parliament, Lord Back for the government explained that the intention and the current practice is that wildlife and cultural heritage considerations are factored into the natural beauty assessments rather than being freestanding tests. While this statement was made in connection with national parks, past and present practice has been to treat practical assessment of natural beauty in national parks and AONBs in the same way. So effectively, although there are differences in the statutes between national parks and AONBs, the government's position that's recorded here is that you treat them in the same way by taking into account cultural heritage and biodiversity as part of landscape, correct?
Yes, I would understand that.
Thank you. And then it says, notwithstanding the next paragraph, notwithstanding the differences in the express statutory provisions, the government's formal position during the passage of the bill was that natural beauty required a national park and an AONB are the same. Natural England considers there's no material difference between the requirements in practical terms of the natural beauty criterion in the two pieces of legislation. Accordingly, if an area meets that criterion, they will normally consider it to have natural beauty of a standard suitable for their either national park or AONB designation. Mm-hmm. And then you are also then referred, aren't you, in this document to go to the appendix to understand what natural beauty is. That's right, isn't it? So if you look at 6.6,
yes.
Have you got 6.6?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, the bottom of that, it says these are shown in table 3 and more fully in appendix 1.
Yeah.
And I think you referred to table 3, but if we go to appendix 1, which we went to yesterday, have you got appendix 1?
Where I probably haven't got it. Hang on, let me just now, so ID 5.3, right?
Well, it's a it's a short point which we went to yesterday. Maybe I can just put it to you. Yeah. It refers, doesn't it, under cultural heritage to the presence of settlements, buildings and other structures that make a particular contribution to perceptions of natural beauty. So again, it emphasises that built form can be part of natural beauty, yes?
Right, okay, yes.
Agreed?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Now, in your proof at page 13 again, you raise, so page 13, in the middle of the page, you talk about the amendment to section 85 of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000. So just briefly on that, I think you'd say that previously there was only a requirement to have regard for the purpose of designation, which was a more passive role. I mean, I'm not sure I actually checked this with you, but you're not a lawyer, are you?
I am not, no.
No. So in terms of what the duty requires as a matter of law, that's not a matter for you to give evidence on, is it?
I'm not sure I would follow the logic of that. I mean, so are you saying that I should not, as a non-expert, be, I mean, I'm merely stating what I believe to be a fact there, but...
That's fine. All I'm saying is that law is not a question of evidence. Law is a question
Law
of
is the
law.
law.
Yeah.
Law is the law. Yeah.
Law is a question
No,
of law.
Well, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, just in relation to that, there is obviously DEFRA guidance on that statutory duty and a DEFRA framework document on that duty, but you've not looked at that for your evidence.
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think you also, in your evidence in chief, we're coming to the end now. So first of all, you mentioned the tunnelling of the A3.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mean, if we want to hear more about that, Mr. Smith worked on that project when he was younger, so he'll be able to tell us all about that. But what I just want to understand with you is, I mean, obviously, the scale of that scheme is completely different to the scale of the present scheme, correct?
For sure. Yes.
And secondly, although it was tunnelled, in order to deliver that scheme, there was the clearance of a very large amount of woodland, wasn't there?
Well, yes, but I think it's so. I think I don't know what you're referring to, so Mr. Smith, obviously better, but essentially, there was obviously clearance of the area around the mouth of the tunnel at either end. It was also part of the policy of the National Trust, as I recall it, that they would remove a lot of woodland from the land above the tunnel so as to seek to restore it to heathland, which opinions are divided as to quite how successful that's been, but that's been the policy of the National Trust. I think you'll find once they reintegrated the areas on either side of what was the previous A3.
Thank you. Now, the final topic I want to deal with, which I've got a few questions on, relates to, if we go to your executive summary.
Yeah.
Again, at page 2. At the very bottom of page 2, you introduce your appendix, and you've got a heading, widespread community support, and you say, evidence is provided that the perspectives set out in the paper have wide cross-community support, drawn both from the 500 letters of objection to the proposals. Now, I just want to ask you about that. 500 objections, I mean, do you mean across the whole story of this, the application, the 2 appeals, that there have been 500 objection responses? Or
So first thing, you will detect there's a typo in that.
I did see that.
The word both is redundant. So just to be clear, I think I'm right in saying, and I'll stand to be corrected, but that the 500 plus includes, there were, well, again, depends what documentation you're looking through, but my recollection is that a lot of the objections to the first appeal were replicated across. I think that required the original objector to take an active step to do that. I'm not
sure.
clear enough on the
No,
process. to be
okay,
honest,
well, that's fine. I mean, I think
so. There were fresh objections, and there were definitely objections that were repeated, and in some cases, I think it's true to say without amendment.
no. So yeah, that's fine. I mean, the basic point is some of those 500 plus objections are from the same person and saying similar things.
That I don't know. I mean, it's a matter of fact, and I'm afraid I'm not able to say whether that is factually correct or not. I'm not sure that they're not 500 discrete people, but obviously the truth is the truth. And
all right. If you don't know, you don't know. That's fine.
I don't know.
Now, I just wanted to understand this as well. The population of the town is about 20,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know it's been said 500 is an extraordinary number and something, but it's about what, 2%, less than 2% of the population of town?
So I'm just doing about 2.5, I think, but anyway.
No, 2.5. I mean, that's assuming they're all from separate individuals rather than repeats. But I mean, in any event, you understand, don't you, that in planning, apart from for neighbourhood plans, planning is not a referendum. It's not about how many people oppose or support. It's about the merits of the arguments.
Yes, absolutely, it is. However, and you will know better than I what the sort of average number of objections to any proposal is or whatever. But it would seem to me that that is a very high numbers. I believe there were 2 letters of support, one from the Forest School, maybe to also the Scout Hut, and then one other individual. So again, in terms of balance of support or otherwise, I think that is relevant. And the other point to make, of course, is that, you know, most people live busy lives and do not take the time to consult on these things. It's particularly true of Haslemere, where many of our residents commute to London and have busy jobs and don't have the time to comment. So while I accept your point that it's a relatively small percentage, I think it does bear witness to a high level of concern amongst the community.
Yeah, I mean, there's other factors that one sees at every inquiry. For example, young people tend not to respond.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And older people tend to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I just wanted to explore this with you. In your, there's an appendix where you sort of start to do an analysis of the 500 letters of objection, and you look at, for example, if you go to page 15, it says 37 respondents made reference to the site being within a valued landscape, and most of them refer to the earlier inspector's report. And then over the page, for example, 3, you've got 17 objectors refer to the importance of Midhurst Road as a gateway. So did you do that analysis, or did somebody else do it for you?
I conducted it. So basically, I had electronic copies in PDF format of all of the letters of objections. I've got software that enables me to do word searches within that, and from that I derive these numbers.
So your understanding is of the 500 objections, there were only 37 who raised the site being within a valued landscape, and only 17 in total who referred to the importance of Midhurst Road as a gateway.
I think bear in mind it's a word search. So there are 37 who used the words valued landscape. There may well be others that may have had similar intent with different words.
Okay.
That's how you should understand.
I'll fully accept that. I'll fully accept that in relation to valued landscape. But if someone was raising the issue of the importance of the Midhurst Road as a gateway, they would be using the word Midhurst Road. And so we can think that's probably quite an accurate reflection of the numbers who are dealing with that issue.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Now, just in relation to that, because obviously what matters is not how many objections there are, but what's actually being said. Can I just understand some of the things that are being said that you have set out in this document? So if you go to page 7 of your proof.
So page 7.
Page 7 of the proof. You've set out.
Going back to the.
Yeah. So this is effectively you've got a series. You say, I've received the following comments from users of footpath 597. Okay,
Yes.
so that's the footpath along Midhurst Road.
Correct.
And then you set out some examples of things that have been said about the scheme by people. I just want to explore a couple of those with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you go to page 7 at the top, there's an entry number 4, Marek and Victoria R.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, regarding the use of the public footpath of the side of the Midhurst Road running from the junction with Scotland's Lane to the Coomers Junction, the path is an incredibly important part of the local area. And then if you drop down to the very end of there, represent the last paragraph, without this path, there is effectively no direct access to open space on foot south from Haslemere. You'd be forced to detour up increasingly busy roads with no pavements for over 1.5 miles around to cut down Stedlands Hill, or more than 2 miles all the way via Sturt Road. Now, that very clearly gives the impression that Marek and Victoria are under the misapprehension, that our proposal in some way involves closing that footpath, correct?
Yes, I think that's probably must be correct.
Yeah. And then similarly, if you look at the next entry, Nancy D, she says right at the bottom of the page, equally, this path provides a safe way home for my son each day when he walks home from school. This is the only way we can allow him to walk home due to the danger that Midhurst Road poses to walkers. So again, I mean, that does carry a pretty clear implication that Nancy D thinks that the path itself is under threat from closure.
I mean, I can't disagree with you in the words they've used. I think, you know, we could get into the detail of to what extent they've looked. I don't know anymore usually whether they've looked at the detail of it. I think there is a concern that this path will become more sort of urbanized, and obviously it will require the crossing of it's I can't imagine it's a sort of overly problematic thing, but the crossing of the access road with the number of cars going up, but that's, you know, I accept that that's hardly the same as crossing the Midhurst Road.
No, no. Okay. Yeah, it's hardly the same as crossing the Midhurst Road. But I mean, in addition, I mean, to the extent that the concern was about a safe route for a child, it's a busy road anyway, the Midhurst Road, and our proposal moves the footpath away from the road and puts vegetation between the road and the footpath. I mean, that's an enhancement, surely, in safety terms.
Well, that's a moot point. I mean, the vegetation obviously will take some time to grow up, and I suppose when grown, it should do.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it is a relatively sheltered, and it's certainly not visible. You know, if you take a point about concern of people who might have malintent, then I don't think you can more than glimpse pedestrians on that path at the present time from the road. I don't ever recall observing one as I've gone down it.
No, but I mean,
yeah, for sure. I understand the point you're making.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're going to look at these objections and consider what weight they're given, I mean, we see from these entries that some people seem to be under the misapprehension that we're closing the footpath, and they've objected on that basis. We heard evidence about the fact that we're putting a car park on Belville Lane from one of the objectors who came on the first day, which is also incorrect. We've heard evidence from yourself about the access to the Forest School being on Belville Lane, which was incorrect. And we've also heard evidence from one resident on day one that she thought the traffic was going from our scheme into Scotland's Close. I mean, an objection, to be valid, does really need to understand the basics of the scheme, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Although I think to balance the comment you've just made, it is fair to say that most of the things you've just referred to were in an original submission that has now been withdrawn. And while you are right that the current scheme does not include those, you can understand why busy lay community members may have failed to realise that those changes have been made. So you know, perhaps if there is an inference that those comments are made with ill intent, then I don't think that's the case. Thank you for confirming that.
No, not ill intent at all.
But clearly, yes, I mean, were the scheme to go ahead, it's evidence that there needs work to be done to make the community better understand what the current proposals are.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's a common phenomenon.
For sure.
That people come to the initial presentations, decide they really don't want to have the proposal, and then they don't ever really go back to investigate what actually comes forward, what amendments are made. And they're still objecting, even now, to what was the scheme 3 years ago rather than how it's been evolved. It's not an uncommon phenomenon, and as you say, people are busy. They don't necessarily look at it.
I will take your word on that, and so I'm not surprised to hear you say it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morici. I think I've just got one outstanding query that I just wanted to pick up with you.
Please.
Bear with me. Oh, yeah, it was when you were giving evidence, you expressed concern about tree felling and the implications of tree felling.
Yes.
Now, we were discussing, I'm not sure if you were there yesterday when we were discussing that, and there's a line of trees that will be removed up the eastern side of the main road.
Correct, yeah.
That we looked at. And I'm taking it that you're concerned about that.
Yes.
There was also the question yesterday that there are other trees within the site that would be felled, and we were looking at a plan identifying them. Is your concern the strip, if I can call it that, along the road, or are you also concerned with the other trees that will be felled on site?
I was referring specifically to the strip along the edge, and of course, as I've not been on the site, I've no real way of knowing the impact of those other trees.
Yeah, that's fine. I thought that was probably the case. I just wanted to double check it. Now, Mr. Brown, as you're acting as the advocate in the normal course of inquiries, I would now give you the opportunity for re-examination as you've seen before. That's a difficult area. It's not an opportunity to invite the witness to change their evidence or to lead new evidence. And anything that you said would need to be entirely neutral. You've heard it done a couple of times before. I don't want it to be suggested that I'm restricting you, but my suggestion, no more than that, is that you might forego the opportunity for re-examination. My experience is it can become quite confusing and doesn't actually take us very far. But over to you.
I do agree, and I think I'd be slightly out my depth if I started doing that. And I think all the points that have been covered, so I'll stop
That's fine.
now.
Okay. Right. Thanks very much for that. It is now 20 past 12. Can we resume, please, at 1:15?